All right, so today we're going to break down your sales $1 at a time. And why this is important, because from that you can predict out what your break-even point is, and then if you get the forecast and what your projected income is from your future sales. So let's start looking at this, what this look like $1 at a time, right? So for every dollar in sales, there's about 40 cents left after you pay for product and payroll, or at least it should be, and we'll get into some of that. 40 cents of every dollar is left to pay for your overhead, administrative expenses, and things of that nature, right? And so we're going to say that, let's say that it costs you $5,000 a month to operate your business, right? That's rent, utilities, administrative expenses like bookkeeping, accounting, your POS systems, whatever other things you have. We're going to just, for this, to simplify this, we're going to call it a $5,000 a month. Now, given this 40 cents, you wind up needing to do $12,500 in sales just to break even. That means you made no profit as a business, but you got all your overhead paid for. I mean, your payroll is paid for, your cost of goods is taken care of, but ultimately the business at this point is break even only. And if this 35 cents goes down, then this dollar amount you need in sales actually increase. So if you could figure out, if you can take every dollar and back out payroll and gross profit as a percent of it, you can then divide that by whatever's left, and it'll tell you what sales you need in order to pay you to break even. So that's going to be the first thing that you need to understand. What is the mix of where your dollar goes, every penny? And so think of every penny as a percent. All right, so next up, we're going to talk about gross profit. And this is the one that gets most people, right? Because people believe that whatever I spent on product, and then sold, whatever's left means that's the gross profit. And so to some degree on a cash basis of accounting, you might be pretty close to accurate. But let's talk about getting specific here. Because if your dollar amount of your sales, if your gross profit goes down, you need to be able to react to that, identify what it is, and how do you manage it appropriately, right? So your goal as an operator should actually be to, how do I get to 25% plate cost, which allows me 5% of waste, and then leaves me at a 30% cost of goods. But if you don't do these things first, you will never be able to figure this out. So waste to 5%, get your cost of goods to 30%, and the first thing you need to do that is recipe costing. Now, once you cost your recipe and you know what it costs, now you really need to understand, how do I even get to what my cost of goods is? Because your recipe cost is like the best case scenario. It's like saying everything that I bought, I wound up selling. I had nothing left over. It was perfect math, right? And so that was going to be our best case scenario. But the way you actually figure out if that is true, because there's always somebody who overportioned, there's somebody who gave too much, or in some cases gave too little. And so your actual plate cost varies because of all these things. So to get your actual gross profit, we need sales minus your cost of goods sold. The cost of goods sold is a function of your beginning inventory plus your purchases minus your ending inventory. And so what this should tell you is that you need at least two different counts at some point in a relatively, ideally short period of time. The way big corporations do it is normally on a rolling 28-day basis. Every 4 weeks, you're going to count everything that you have in your thing, and you're going to figure out every period how far off of you from your 25% cost, right? So this is your waste is going to vary. If you're good, you can keep a steady 5%. That's what you will want, right? But it's going to be some down that is a 7%. Sometimes it's a 10%, and then sometimes it might be a 3%, right? That varies sometimes based on like how good you are at predicting out your sales. Because what you spend your dollars on is based on what you think you'll do in sales, right? So just quick math right with me, right? So if I think I'm gonna project myself to do 10,000 in sales, and I have a 30% cost of goods structure, then that means 3,000 of that 10,000 is what I should spend that week in sales, right? But if that 10,000 in sales don't come through, I overspend, and then as a result, some of that $3,000 worth of product goes into the waste. So lower sales, same $3,000 means the percent is higher. And then vice versa, right? If I plan to do 10, but I wind up doing 11 or 12 or 15, which ideally you would never be that far off, but same thing applies. And then if you add in that same complexity with payroll, you can wind up miss your goal of sales projection, and you are now overspending in purchases and in payroll, further diminishing what income you could have from your operation. So gross profit is a must. You must track it. You must manage it. The way you do it is by understanding what your cost of goods is. To do that, you need to understand what your plate cost is. You need to be able to track your waste, and then you need to conduct periodic inventories. That's the proper way to figure out what my true cost of goods is and get out of the game of guessing. Because if you want to be profitable, you can't pretend. You can't simply go with the flow. You got to put math to the numbers. You've got to. All right, so next we're going to talk about payroll and controlling payroll, right? And so this one I find interesting because how people determine how much payroll to use, it's really all over the board. But let's talk through an ideal process, right? So payroll, just like cost of goods, should be a function of predicted sales. Now, none of what I'm telling you is absent of what you already do. So that's the truth. At the very basis, every time you as an owner walk into your door and prepare for a day or a week or however frequently you do your preparations, you are predicting what I'm going to do in sales, how many people I need to take care of them, how much product I need to buy, what those items are, and most of you all do it out of your mind. And what that means for you, or at least what it feels like for you, is that how good you are makes you feel prideful in the outcome. But what never happens is actually you don't measure your variance. So you don't really know how good you really are, because stuff that goes bad. And if you don't track it, then it's stuck. And if you don't actually track payroll as a percent to your sales, you can't really determine if you overscheduled or not. And so payroll should also have a goal. And so I'm going to say 30%, but 25 to 30% should be the safe space to be, right? And if you're going to do this, the way you do it is you got to have an effective operating system. That means you have to have recipes. They have to be able to be scaled based on predicted sales. What type of cuisines you're producing also varies, right? A hot dog stand won't have 30% payroll. A burger joint shouldn't have 30% payroll. But some of our fine dining and our most Southern comfort foods, you're going to be running 25 to 30% of the payroll. And if you're talking fine dining where you're really creating an extreme experience, you might even get to 35%. But if you're doing that, then your prices are going to be higher. Your cost of goods, you're going to go from 25% food cost down to 20% food cost, and that's because your cost of each dish is higher. But we can get into all that math as well, right? You need to have a skilled staff. So you have to be able to train people how to do things in your absence. You cannot, or you should not want to be in your business being the engine driving the outcome. Not in the sense of getting your hands dirty every day. And so what we focus on, we try to teach our clients is that we create and help you document your system, create kind of a digital twin of yourself so that you can actually get your hands dirty only when you want to, not because you have to. And then you need an organizational leadership. Somebody has to be running the show. So if you're not going to work every day, somebody has to be equipped enough and know what they should do. And so that becomes down. So these are the things that are required to have an effective payroll run. Because otherwise, what you start doing is throwing bodies at it. You got a lot of work to do. You got this going on, that going on. You never sit down. You didn't design it. And so what do? Just add another body. And then your payroll winds up at 40%. And so every time you hear these percents clicking up, just think that money just flushing down the drain. That's money that should be in your pocket, that you should be bringing home as income. But because you didn't do the work up front, the math, you sitting struggling, stressed out, frustrated, wondering when your door's going to close. We get to fix that. You get to fix that. And I just become your guide. So next up, we're gonna quickly switch from all this, and we're going to talk about this idea that you hear me talking about quite frequently, and people tie it to AI, but I'm talking about predictions, right? And the reason that's important, because this is what happens, right? Let's go January, February, March, April, May, June, July, that's another J, August, my birth month, September, October, November, December, right? And so what I often heard, especially right now, is the summer slump. And it's ironic that folks who've been in business for a long time always get caught by surprise. And that's because when they start the year, they don't have a budget. They don't predict things. They know Mardi Gras is going to fall somewhere up in here. but they don't predict what they're going to do in Mardi Gras until Mardi Gras is upon them. They know summer slowdown is going to come up in here, but they don't do anything about it until it comes upon them. So if you actually realize your sales run something like this, up here, it dips down here, and then it picks back up. So what that tells me is that if my sales run like this, and we're going to call it seasonality, right? If my sales flow like that, that means these months of great sales, I need to stick some of the money, some of the excess income off to the side to cover these particular times of the period. Now, again, all these processes you hear me talking about, this is how big businesses have been doing it forever. And I'm not suggesting that this should change how it feels in your restaurant. What it should change is the stress that you carry. Why? Because you're prepared. You're able to see the future more clearly. Culinary Analytics designed a system to do all these things in one place. We're talking about sales prediction based on your past sales. We talk about, as a result of that prediction, how much and which dishes are you projected to sell over the next 3 days. Then exactly what ingredients you need in order to do that business. Then we predict out what you need to do in payroll for the next week. And so when you're writing your schedule, you know, hey, okay, I need 6 people here, 4 people here. Your payroll should not be a flat line. That is wrong. Your payroll should move with the demand of the business. Because what you get is you're going to get feast and famine in terms of work, right? So let's say Wednesdays are slow days, and you got the same schedule as Saturdays. Saturdays, they're going to be humping, busting their ass. But on Wednesday, they're going to be sitting around on your clock. And so if you're not managing that appropriate, you might even see a result of this as turnover. Because that weekend people, they're going to get burned out. They're going to be tired and they won't deal with it. So you have to be ahead of these things. So our system predicts that out. It understands the difference and dynamics of days that allows you to better prepare your business. And also what we do for you is that we're going to sit down and we're going to talk through this thing I just call seasonality, right? Why? Because you need to know what to expect, right? So if you got, year 1, year 2, year 3, and let's call year 1, you average 100,000 a month. Year 2, you average 110. So you wind up with a 10% growth. And we want to predict out year 3. So are we going to go 115? We're going to do 120? Or we're going to do 110 again, right? So we need to put some kind of algorithm towards that. Then we need to see how this was done, that seasonality thing, right? How did those sales look? And that way we can take that projected sales and apply it out over the course of that year. Now you're planning and projecting what I'm going to do in the next year. And then as a result of all this, we can then say, well, cost of goods is going to be here. Payroll is going to be here. Other expenses is going to be here. Therefore, projected income going to be here. Right? And so if you do this way, this is how you design your path to $100,000 net income. That sweet line that everybody wants to be in. This don't mean this is how much the owner makes. The owner should be taking a salary from their business, and then after their salary, that's how much more money they should be making. Right? It's all math. But you have to be the one to work out the formula. We help you with that. We make it simple, understandable. We provide you all the knowledge you need in order to run your business the best and guide you to that 6-figure income business. Okay, so now let's wrap this up, right? So if you've read this board and caught this message across the top, it says that if you do not know where every dollar goes, there's no way you're going to be able to trace where $100,000 goes. Period. Hands down. Right? Let's double back to our beginning story of $12,500 needed break even to cover the $5,000 in expenses. And that's based on that what? 40 cents of every dollar goes towards bills and income. That means that after this, that $12,501 in sales, I make 40 cents in profit, in income, right? So marginally, I should start seeing about 40 cents after that point, which means that if I need this to turn into $100,000 a year in income, I'm gonna screw this up, but we're gonna try it. I need roughly, what is that, 400,000 in sales. How do you get here? That's what we then talk about. So next time we're gonna talk about how to go from I can cook, I do pop-ups, I can run a food truck, to my brick and mortar, and growing from zero income to that 100,000 a year.